So we have updated the BIOS on this Asrock Z690 motherboard. This is the Pro RS. I'm going to duplicate what we see over here, okay? This is my, we'll call it Noctua D14++. Alright, so normally this comes with just the center fan on that CPU cooler. We've added additional fans on it. Interesting enough, the I7-13700k has had issues with all of my Asus Prime Z690p motherboards. They have the latest BIOS update, yet they do not perform like they should. Very weak benchmarks, as well as Intel's XTU is locked out. Not sure what the problem is, but I don't have the patience to wait for another BIOS update. So we want to get more videos made with the 13700k, and when we're just going to end up putting it over here. So first thing I need to do, folks, is get rid of the Celeron. I did make another video of me updating this motherboard, the BIOS. So this has the 1606 update in it. And so we will end up hopefully with a good working motherboard. So we did have some odd things happen. Issues getting the BIOS to actually update. Finally it did, and I do have some concern though. This whole 12th gen, 13th gen thing, it's been interesting. Alright, so we've got to take off these fans. Hopefully keeping all the Noctua brackets in place. I'm just going to leave the fans sitting here because they're going to go right into the next motherboard. I'm going to take the RAM off of here. So I was going to run 4133 megahertz. It doesn't appear that RAM was compatible with this motherboard. I believe it is compatible with the other motherboard, the Asrock, but I think what we'll do, folks, is we're going to do G-Skills 3600 megahertz, 36 gigs. Ooh, hate when that happens. Almost be a good idea if I could keep this Phillips tied to my hand. Alright, so the other thing we're going to do, CPU frame. You see it sitting right there. That is going to go into the Asrock motherboard. So let us get this frame out of here. Actually, make my life easier getting the brackets out. We'll take the RAM out. We will need to put the RAM in before we put the CPU cooler back on. And hopefully we won't lose any parts. Can't tell you how many times, folks, I have lost a part of a CPU cooler, whether it's a nut or some other piece. I have from, I don't know if it was from Deep Cool, no, from Be Quiet. They were nice enough to send me out some parts I was missing. Frame over here. Now we need to unplug these. And then we need to clean up our CPU. Next, using this tool, pop the frame off. Try and move this to where I don't have to bend over as far to do it. So we're just gonna, just like we did when we installed it, slowly loosen it up. We don't want to end up somehow bending our frame. Now you can just feel all the tension's gone in the screws, so we can completely pull them out. Let's see if that is. Whoa! So that is scary, folks. That's one of my things I don't like about the CPU frame. Hopefully we did not damage that. Okay. Everything looks good. I'm going to put this to the side, but I would definitely go straight to putting the cover back on it. And I also need to find all my screws. Hopefully when you do that, this thing, even though you can get the screws out, you may end up with thermal paste or something else that causes it to stick to the motherboard as it did for me. And if that happens and you pop it up like that, that's happened a couple times to me now, you will find that there's that potential to damage it. And hence why I'm not a huge fan of these CPU frames. Hey, look at that, the back plate. So this thing never has come off of any of the previous motherboards. And there it is. Alright, so I've left this CPU in till the last moment. We want to protect it as best we can. And I think we will just relieve the pressure off of that. Now as I'm doing this, I'm holding the CPU down because what I have found from doing this, just like we saw it pop open, this process can cause it to pop off. We didn't get enough threads out yet. So we'll need these screws. And I would assume they're all the same type, right? But they may not be. Asrock might not have bought their screws from the same place that Asus did. So we'll try and stick with the same screws. And keeping, like I said, keeping this CPU in here to protect the pins. As you've seen, we already dropped a screwdriver. I'm just trying to be safe. Now that that is in, folks, we'll take the CPU out that's in here. This is the Celeron. You can use two hands, which is probably a smart thing to do, right, once you get it out of there. So from here, we will grab our I7-13700k. We got to make sure we put it in the right orientation. So as you're looking at this with the I/O shield to the left, you can read the print in there, triangle there. You don't see a triangle on there anymore because it was removed with the cover. Now I drop that down in there. And I like to use two hands, like I said. So it is in there. Now we can put this back on. Now before I do that, folks, I'm going to clean off the bottom of it because it is quite evident that it has stuff on it. And that just like you saw when I went to remove it. This thing's already been installed like 4 times. Alright, so there's a triangle. I want to match that up with the CPU. So I'll drop that in, and you notice it doesn't necessarily line up perfectly. Actually, that's not the right term. It's a tight fit. Is what I should have said. Now it's lined up. So I'll put all the screws in the holes. And what I'm going to do here is just put a couple threads on. And as one viewer has recommended, and I've done and seen in other places, we'll basically get a couple threads in here. And we're slowly wanting to drop this down. And hopefully this structure will provide some additional rigidity to this. Alright, so from there now we're going to go clockwise and just a couple more threads. You don't want to be in a hurry, even though you see me going relatively quick. If you go even half this speed, don't feel like, you know, you need to be in a rush. Like, it's exciting, I want to get this gaming computer going, but if you or your dad or whoever's building this computer wrecks it, you know, just because they were careless and went really fast, and you've already seen me drop a couple things and some things that have happened. You know, sometimes everything goes perfect. Other times things are not so perfect. And we are tightening that down. So I could put a lot of my weight behind this, right? Some of you might end up doing this at the end. I'm just going to use what strength I could do that way. You're going to get more torque on it going that way, and I feel a little more safe not over torquing it. Alright, so here's the steps we're going to do. We're going to put the knock 2 mount in first, get it going, then I put the RAM in, then we'll put the thermal paste down, and we should be hopefully rocking. Now I could do this, you know, like I said, really fast. And maybe, just so you guys don't get bored, we'll speed it up a little bit. But me as well, I'm excited about using this computer. Notice the orientation here. This is dependent on how you want your CPU fan installed. When I say that, there's the threaded nuts that you're lining up with. We want air to flow this way, okay? So the fan has an exhaust side and intake side. And so you have to line all those things up perfect. I gotta say, folks, these frames, even though they're kind of a pain in the butt, they really do kind of make for a neater design. And eventually somebody probably will figure out a way to get them to disassemble and assemble a little better than it does currently work. Alright, like I said, we'll do the RAM next. RAM can go in only on one way. Okay, this side is shorter than that side. If you have 2 sticks of RAM, A2 and B2, alright, so let me just demonstrate that. If I only had 2 sticks of RAM, I would stick them in these spots, okay? Now, fact is I have 4 matching sticks, so I'm going to fill those up. And usually you'll hear, you know, kind of like a double click, depending on the setup of the motherboard. Now that I've got that, there's all kinds of ways to put thermal paste on, folks. Sometimes you can put too much on. You don't want to put too little on. Because of the base that I have here being, well, this one's actually square, but the CPU is a little more rectangular than the previous generation. Other coolers might have a round base where, in my opinion, a dot would be ideal. Something like a stock cooler. Not necessarily for what we're doing here, but in this case, I want to make sure that I got good spread. So I'm going to put three lines on here. And maybe a little thicker in the middle of that line. Ideally, you know, this line would be nice and thick and spread. You don't want to go too thick, in my opinion, on the outside lines, as that'll just overflow. But the way these CPU frames work, folks, it's almost difficult to get the paste down in the CPU into the socket, so it's really not too bad of a setup. Now, whether the CPU frame will actually reduce your temperatures at all is another story. I'm still waiting to see the benefit of it. Now I'm tightening down the CPU cooler. This is knocked to a D14, and it doesn't appear that we lined it up good, folks. Still not lined up. You don't want to over tighten one side than the other, because then you will never get it. There we go. You may never get it tightened down. So now we can crank this thing back to the other side, and then I'll finish the far side. And okay, that side's done, folks. And that paste is getting spread across the CPU, filling cracks and ensuring that we have nice surface to transfer the heat from the CPU to the cooler. Now we just attach our CPU coolers. So, as I noted, this is the intake side, that's the exhaust side, okay? I want intake side here, I want to see the intake side here, and then intake side here, okay? So, hence, this one on the outside is oriented like it is. And I do have another tan one of these, but unfortunately it's being used somewhere else. Actually, I have 2 more tan ones. Alright, then we've got put our center one in. Once again, the orientation of that, and we'll change the angle. Looks like that. I'm going to drop this down as low as I can drop it. If you were to check the temps on this thing, temperatures at the bottom here are higher than what they are at the top. So if we can cool the bottom a little better, then you're better off, right? That's why this RAM, the higher your RAM is, in my opinion, is not such a good thing. It's like, oh yeah, let me have all this pretty RGB lighting, but we're affecting how well it cools. Now if you have water cooling, you know, it's another story. Alright, so that one actually accidentally slipped in there. Now we're going to plug these in, and see, the first one is the CPU cooler. The one closest to the CPU is for the CPU cooler, and the other is the optional. So that's in, and then our optional one here. And boom. And that's all, folks. Hopefully you'll see some new benchmarks from this motherboard in the future on the channel. Please like, please subscribe. Thank you.